Hey guys, recently I was very happy because I discovered that I could use my fancy Roly Seaboard controller um, with Alchemy and with Sculpture, two of my favorite synthesizers. And in this video, just a short video, I want to show you how to set that up. So let's visit Alchemy first, and you can already see the secret right there. If you click this little disclosure triangle, it opens up a new panel here, and this is where we need to select MIDI mono mode, and that is basically it enables MPE multi-channel polyphonic expression control for Alchemy, which means that we can have modulation per note. Apple confusingly calls this MIDI mono mode because I've known like it has to do with the channels. They're being weird with that, but that just means MPE. So that's the first thing to set up, and I'm using the common base channel 1 there, and that's because that's what Roly uses. If we open our dashboard, we can actually see that. Right here it says global channel 1, so that is for like everything that's not node based. So that's why we set the base channel here to 1. Then the pitch range is 48, which means that we can just do the slides as we're used to in Equator, for example. And then I've set up control A to be 74. This is the only one that I'm using. We have control A up until D, which, like, if we click that, we can select the controller number. And the reason I chose 74 is because 74 is what the Roly sends if you go into slide mode. And slide is like the movement from like the vertical movement on a key. So in case you're wondering how I got that number, there's two ways. You could use a MIDI monitor like I showed in a last video, which registers all data coming from the keyboard. So if I do something, we can see a whole bunch of numbers, and including there is control, and then you can see 74. So control 74, that's a CC message. And then we also see our channel pressure, but we need to approach that a little bit differently. So to get that control value, which is mapped to CC74, we select 74 there. And let's first just mess around with that one. So what I did is I imported a vocal sample here, and if I set my output, we can actually hear that. Let's see, I'm just gonna reset a couple of things. I'll set the panning back to 0, and I set the speed to static. Alright, so just a basic vocal. I'll make that a little bit louder. But what I did there is I imported that in additive mode, and to do that, if I just go to a new engine and I say import audio, I could go to that vocal folder again, which was somewhere, I don't remember, it doesn't actually matter. But once you've selected the vocal, you can click on additive here and then hit import, and it's going to import it in additive mode, which means that it's going to rebuild that sample all using sine waves, which we can see in the additive engine right here. But for us, what that means is that we get a few extra harmonic controls, and I always really like to mess around with these. So what I did is I set up the different harmonics to be controlled with that control A74. So now if I hold a key, we get a pretty static sound, but then I can slide up the key to, for example, pronounce the fifth partials, the fifths. So that's just sliding up and down the same key. Now, because we've set up our mono mode pitch range, we can also do the normal slide stuff, glide, I mean. And we can do that with 2 notes at the same time, so we can glide one up and one down. So that's just as what you would expect from something like Equator. So really cool. We actually get like a very advanced synthesizer with lots of polyphonic options. Now there's one more thing that we might want to control, which is the Aftertouch. And that one is not set up here. Like, in fact, all these things here, they don't mean anything. So I can just switch them off. So like to use that slide, we just click something, and then we say MIDI, and then we choose Control A. Right? That's how I control these guys right here. But the Aftertouch, this is a bit odd. The Aftertouch is in a different category. It's actually under Note Property and then Aftertouch. But it does work. Like, normally, there's a difference here. Normally, Aftertouch is actually only for one channel, and but here it's like normally in Logic it would look like what do they call? They call it channel pressure. But here the Aftertouch is actually for multiple channels at the same time. So to test that, what we could do is we could set this up for the panning, and we could play a note and then apply more pressure. And then you can hear it panning around. And if we add a note in that, we and I apply like different pressures to the different notes. Let's say we play 2 G notes an octave apart. We can actually pan them separately. By applying different pressure to each of the keys. So truly polyphonic stuff, really nice. And then just to mess around with this, what I did is I also set the Aftertouch to control the speed here, so that we can play through the sample. This might actually be a more straightforward example even, because like this speed control, what it does, if right now it's frozen, and if I set this to 100%, it's going to play back the whole vocal sample, which sounds like that. If I set this to 0, it's going to freeze it. But if we set the Aftertouch to that, we can, with the Aftertouch, control where we want to be in our sequence or in our sample. Of course, we need to give it some amount. And the Aftertouch, I always find it triggers a bit quickly. So the great thing in Alchemy is that we can set up these mod maps in between these sources. And this is also something that you're used to from Equator. And now we can set the Aftertouch to activate a little bit later. And then let's try it with 2 notes and give them different phrases. Alright, so really cool stuff with that. This is just an example. Of course, you can take this super far, and I'm planning on doing some videos on showing that, showing some different like sound design examples and cool stuff that you can do with this. But for now, this should get you going. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and see you in another video.